Hey guys, three things going on in the news today I just wanted to bring to your attention and comment on. First, for us Catholics, the biggest news is the Conclave. Black smoke was released, so they didn't vote. They didn't pick a pope today. They didn't get the 2/3 majority they needed. If history any indication, I would say by Friday we'll know, because I believe it took Pope Francis 2 days of voting for Pope Francis, 2 days of voting for Pope Benedict, and 3 days of voting for Pope St. John Paul II. So 2 to 3 days seems like the modern average. I think average over time was like 9 days. Very interesting. I made a quick short video yesterday morning, I believe, about the Pope, and I said I believe God's going to choose a Pope that's from the Middle East or from Africa. I'd mentioned Asia maybe prior to saying that, what I thought. And I said, because I believe there's so much persecution of Christians going on in the world, we need someone from this persecuted areas. But interesting, I said the Middle East, and I heard about a man I don't know much about. I'm not making any predictions. I have no insight. I don't know anyone in Rome. It just seems interesting to me. First, his name. I'm sorry, the timer is flashing for some reason. Hopefully this is recorded. First, his name, Cardinal Pizzabella. I'm sure you heard of it. It's a cool name. Italian guy with the name pizza in it. He's got to be a cool guy. Also, he was born in Italy the same year that I was born in the Italian section of Newark, New Jersey. So I got that in common with him. And like I said, I know very little about these cardinals, but what I see in this man is a very serious man. And we live in some serious times. So I had the thought, maybe this is God's man for this time. And although he's Italian, he grew up in Italy, he's been in the Middle East. He's the cardinal for Jerusalem. And when the Hamas savages took all the hostages, he offered himself in exchange for the children. That's hardcore. And this is a serious man. This isn't an emotional guy. This is a serious, analytical, methodical man. So he counted the cost, and he was willing to pay it for children. That is so Christ-like. The children are most important to Jesus. So that's a stand-up guy in my book. That's a Christ-like cardinal in my book. And like I said, of course, all these guys are brilliant. They all speak multiple languages, but I thought what was unique about him, he spoke Arabic, Hebrew, and English, as well as Italian, of course, and Latin. So I just thought he would be an interesting pick. And again, I have no insight. I learned today that betting on the Pope is an excommunicatable offense. So don't bet on who you think the Pope is going to be. And it's kind of funny, growing up in Jersey and Newark and Irvington, every neighborhood had a bookie. You could bet on anything. You could bet on popes through your bookie. But now you can do it legally online. But back in the day, if you want to do sports betting or any like odd betting, like betting on the Pope, you'd call your neighborhood bookie. And ironically, 90% of those bookies I was related to by blood, and the other ones I was through friends. I knew them, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. So God may choose a serious man for these serious times, and like I said, this man, Cardinal Pizzabella, seems like a serious man, a godly man. Or he may pick a joyful man, Cardinal Tegel from the Philippines seems like he's full of the joy of the Lord. And maybe that's what the church needs. We need to be led and learn how to live in joy. There'll always be trials, there'll always be persecutions, but one of the fruits of the Spirit is joy, And that would be really interesting too, because when I did this seminar, an online seminar thing with John Leap's evangelization, we had defended the Pope and And we had some amazing people on it. We had a 96-year-old priest who was the confessor to Mother Teresa, and he was a spiritual son to Saint Padre Pio. And he came to the defense of Pope Francis because he knew him as well. And we also had Cardinal Tagle had said he had given a semi-agreement, but he was like super busy, and he was so close to saying yes, but he couldn't do it. So that would have been cool. And I remember telling my parish priest, he's like, you realize that guy could be the next Pope? And I had never heard of him at the time. I said, wow. And so I Googled him, and, I see him a very joyful and loving cardinal. So of course, if you're full of joy, you're not miserable, they're going to call you a liberal, even though the Philippines is the most conservative country in the world. And they are like the most, I remember Father Calloway gave a talk at our church, and he said the Philippine Catholics are like the special forces of Catholicism. But because he's nice and he's loving, the world is going to label him as a liberal. They won't take his doctrinal stance, they'll take his temperament and make him out to be a liberal. Even if you go on AI, it'll call him a liberal. So that would be interesting. And then what I thought was really interesting, I did a video about Vigano, the heretic, the excommunicated Vigano, Carlo Vigano, how I thought it was kind of rich that he was suing the Catholic Church for stealing when he himself was convicted in two courts of law, the Italian court and the Swiss court, for stealing over $2 million from his brother, Father Lorenzo, and like $300,000 from his little sister, Susanna. And I said, that's complete projection. But what I found out since, I found out a lot that I'm going to have to report on here shortly. But what I also found out is one of the cardinals involved in this so-called theft, according to the betting markets, is like the number one pick, Cardinal Parolin. And again, I don't know much about these cardinals. I don't know much about him. I'm sure Vigano calls him a liberal, but whoever gets picked, Vigano will call liberal. just remember that. So that's on the conclave. And then the left just, they're so hypocritical, but their hypocrisy was on full display. So down here in Florida, Disney's, especially Central Florida where I live, Disney's huge. And a couple years ago, the parents were furious. They were at school board meetings reading these books that these teachers were reading to their 5-year-old students. And they were so explicit talking about gay sex that the school boards that approved them, these liberal school boards in these towns that approved them, were telling the parents, cutting their mics, saying, you can't say that in public. She's like, I'm a grown-up talking to a grown-up. And you're saying it's too perverted, it's too pornographic. This is what the teachers are saying to our children, our 5, 6, and 7-year-old children. This is being taught in kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade. So the parents in Florida, they went to the governor, and the governor's like, well, yeah, this is ridiculous. And he said, we don't need to talk about sex, any kind of sex, to 5, 6, and 7-year-olds. So he put a law, the parental rights law. He passed it, and you can't teach sex. Can't talk about sex to 5, 6, and 7 years old. And Disney, the perverts that run Disney, sued Governor DeSantis, trying to get the courts to force him to allow teachers to teach these pornographic stuff in the school. And of course, with the left, the issue is never the issue. And whatever the left-wing Democrat politicians say, the media reports it as a fact. So the left-wing Democrats were calling it the Don't Say Gay bill, which the word gay wasn't even in the bill. It was parental rights of parents that said, we don't want our children to learn about sex at 5, 6, and 7 years old from a stranger. We don't know these teachers. The United States public school system has the worst case of sexual abuse amongst children. Way worse. According to the United States Department of Education, way worse than any religious institution's ever been. So why would you want these teachers teaching your... And I have family members that are school teachers that are good Catholic people, and I'm I'm not saying all school teachers, but I'm saying why risk this? So Disney made a big thing. The left was like, the whole left wing media, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, were reporting out this, the Don't Say Gay bill. This is anti-LGBTQ. ESPN, which is owned by Disney, had a moment in silence during a basketball game. It's like, I'm watching basketball. I don't want to hear political nonsense from the left. They had a moment of silence because the state of Florida is discriminated against our LGBTQ community. That was the reason for the moment of silence. Disney threatened to leave Orlando. And of course, Disney lost the case. Ron DeSantis and the parents of Florida won the case. And then today, Disney announced, it's big news. Disney does anything in Central Florida, it's big news. The big news today on the radio, Disney announced their 7th theme park in the UAE, in Dubai. In the UAE, if you say gay, you get beheaded. Literally, the crime of being gay is punishable by beheading in the UAE. And I haven't heard one liberal give a moment of silence. I haven't heard one liberal say, oh, we can't go to UAE. They kill gays. You see, because with the left, the issue is never the issue. They're so full of crap. So just remember that. The left is just full of hypocrisy. They virtue signal what they think is good. So, and then the worst, even worse than that, today I read that Washington State passed a bill requiring Catholic priests to break the seal of confession. The church said, we will not break the seal. We will obey God rather than man. So some priests may have to go to jail because the state of Washington is requiring them to break the seal of confession for certain crimes. So if someone comes in and confesses to a priest certain crimes, they have a few crimes listed. I'm not going to get into them. But this state law will require them to go to the police and break the seal, the sacred, holy seal of confession. Now, thank God Joe Biden isn't president, because he would have said, this is a good idea. Let's make this a federal law. Instead, Donald Trump is president, and his attorney general said this is unconstitutional. She's going to investigate it, and she's going to try and stop it. So that's the good news. But the seal of confession is sacred. There have been priests who've been killed by kings because the king demanded to know what their queen confessed. This is a sacred seal. So, people don't like when I talk politics, but you see, political decisions affect the church. So what we need to do is go on the offensive. Retreats are nice, but we need to stop retreating. Go on the offensive and change the culture. Don't let the culture come into the church and try and change us. No. When we made the separation between church and state, it was for the church to be protected from the state, not vice versa. So we need to go on the offensive and change the culture and change the political landscape and protect religious freedom, protect freedom of speech, so we can spread the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news. God bless, stay Catholic, pray for the next Pope. I know a lot of people are saying, well, the cardinals make the decision. It's not really the Holy Spirit. He could guide them. But God is in control. God is in control. And he can use people's agendas. He can use whatever, people not listening to the Holy Spirit. He knows who's going to listen to the Holy Spirit. He knows who isn't. And at the end of the day, his will be done. So let's just pray that the cardinals are obedient to the Holy Spirit and this happens quickly. God bless and stay Catholic.